The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. First-time depositors get a $100 match on your first deposit with code MAYO. That's MAYO, in case you don't know how to spell. Now you know, because you can probably hear. I guess if you didn't know how to spell, me saying MAYO probably isn't helping you anyway, because those are letters, and you're probably very confused by letters like cavemen from the past who get vaulted into the future. What are these scribblings? I have no idea what they mean. But if you're someone who knows how to download an app and knows how to spell, Code Mayo will get you that $100 deposit match. Hit up my Twitter, too. I had some F1 stuff come out. I had some Live stuff come out. Brian Hooper's my guest right now. So Bric75.com. No K in that Bric. I mean, if you do know how to spell that, it might actually be a problem for you. But why is there no K in the Bric, by the way?
That is because... I can't believe no one's ever asked me this. Is because it's my childhood nickname and it's not Bric.
Oh, okay.
Everyone just calls me that, so I just stuck with it. I wanted to say for the people who can't read, for M, just think of like the McDonald's logo, right? For A, Arby's, right? You could go down the list. YMCA, your local YMCA.
Oh, O-face.
Oh God, what's a good O? There's O's everywhere, right?
Yeah, the Olympics.
Okay. No, it's probably not helping someone who can't read.
I mean, even with the McDonald's thing, I saw they actually turned the M upside down, so now it's like WickDonald sauce and stuff like that. Like, that's just confusing.
Yeah, right. God, there's kind of Ozempic.
Do you know anyone on Ozempic?
I don't know, but yeah, that is. I hear that. I hear like actually good things, but I gotta know. I can't see how, 10 years from now we don't have some sort of, class action lawsuit.
Wait, I don't know anyone on it either, because I think you and I are like around the same age. It seems like people in their early 50s are like late 40s, early 50s. That seems to be the weight loss zone for like Ozempic users. Maybe there are people like my age doing it. I have no idea. But it sounds like from everything that I've read and heard, like it works and it's not like terrible for you. But the moment that you stop doing it, you're screwed.
Well, okay. Yeah. I believe it. I think there's like it I've heard like it changes like DNA and stuff like that. Who knows if any of that's true, but
so you can basically take the vaccine or do Ozempic, like same results kind of thing.
What if one counteracts the other? What do you do then? Or they're both just placebos and they just work really well, or at least Ozempic did.
Yeah, it just gets in your head and you're like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm not hungry anymore.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the placebo effect is a real thing. I mean, if you look, I did this with my dad the other day, like, but if you look at the average weight of Americans by decade, I mean, it goes up like 15 pounds a year since 1950.
15 pounds a decade.
What's that?
You say 15 pounds a year?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
yeah,
impossible. 15... People would weigh like 8,000 pounds.
Yeah, they do. Like the average, the average weight is like, and it depends on like the, female, male and what type and stuff like that. But like, it's like 170 pounds for a woman, something like that.
That's the average in America, 170 pounds?
Something like that. And like, that was a couple of years ago.
It's funny because the rest of like, especially Canadians, being Canadian, like to talk a lot of shit about like, oh, Americans are so fat. It's like Canadians are pretty fat. Like Brits and Canadians are pretty fat as well. Like
it's coming. It's coming if it's
does
not
it go
there.
but like is it like a bell curve? Does it go back the other way? Or do we just end up like that movie Wall-E?
No, it's like a straight line and then the like 40s or 50s and then it goes straight up.
So maybe Ozempic is like what we need.
That's what I'm saying, because you said it's like people over 50. I'm like, the numbers say it's everywhere. It's everybody. It's probably all ages are probably on it. Have you ever looked at those old videos, from the 1900s, sometimes even from the late 1800s of just like the first cameras someone recorded a city, right? So like Vancouver or Quebec or Chicago, New York, 1905, everyone's skinny, like literally everyone in frame.
I noticed that, okay, so I moved to Jersey in 2013, and I would be spending a ton of time between Jersey and then in Manhattan. Like, I'd go into the Sirius studios and record. I'd go in every weekend and, like, stay at my buddy's place, and we just go party for, like, 3 straight days. From, like, Friday night to Monday morning, I'd take the train back to Jersey. And then, like, I would go in periodically through the week. And the one thing that I really noticed, and I noticed it a lot in Toronto as well when I lived there, is that people who live in the city still pretty skinny. You're walking everywhere. Like, that's the one thing I noticed when I moved back here, where, like, I moved back to Halifax probably 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago. And it, like, you can't walk anywhere. Like, everything is so far away. Like, to walk to the grocery store for me right now would be like 25 minutes, like there and back, like down a hill and then up back a big hill. So it's not convenient. You need to own a car. The transit system is horrible. But in Toronto and when I was in Manhattan, I just walk. Like, I'd either take the subway or I'd walk everywhere. And you, like, the amount of, like, I struggle. I try to walk 10,000 steps a day, and I have to go out of my way to get in those 10,000 steps. When I lived there, I didn't. I just naturally had like 15,000 steps a day.
I had the exact same observation in the city, living in the city compared to the suburbs. I imagine, although I agree with you, I imagine there's some selection bias there where, like, super fat people aren't probably walking, so you don't see them. This is getting too mean here, but yeah. So I imagine there's some selection bias too. But I'd like to see if they can partition that data and then improve it. I bet you're right.
Well, I'd be like, well, almost what you brought up with Ozempic as well, versus like the different age ranges if everyone is doing it. If you took the state of, actually, I wouldn't even say the full state of California. If you took Southern California out of that, I wonder how much that would skew the age range up.
Yes. Yeah, true. I don't know, and like places like Florida too have, like, a huge senior population, which could change the stats on a lot of things, like especially during COVID. So I mean, I wonder if like, because it seems to me too, like older people are usually a little skinnier too, like people in their 80s, and I wonder if that's also because they're probably healthy enough to live that long.
I think there's a part of it, and then you just, like, every year, basically over 40, like, you lose testosterone. You, in men at least, you lose the ability to retain muscle and build muscle. That you're just naturally going to be thinner all of a sudden. Like, even like if you're a larger person and you're walking around all the time, like, your legs are probably pretty strong because you're carrying a lot of weight walking around all the time. That by the time that if you make it to 85, like, your muscles deteriorated away, so naturally you're going to look slimmer.
Who's that Matt Kuchar's bag man? Who's the bag man with the calves?
Oh, fuck, what's his
God,
name?
who am I thinking? It's Kuchar, right? I can't remember, but anyways, whoever on the tour, he's just jacked, and then he lost some weight, and he's just got those huge legs.
Well, Phil had that too. Like, Phil's calves are amazing.
Yeah, sure. I think that's from just pressing off the ground for 30 years.
And then he lost all that when he did that, like, all coffee diet or whatever he went on. He probably did Ozempic. But the thing is, like, people get, like, Ozempic face, though. Like, you can tell people who are on Ozempic.
Really?
Yeah, like, you see it. Like, they look a bit gaunt because, like, the weight comes off so fast when you start doing it. And it's not like, like, when I'm trying to lose weight, I'm still also strength training at the same time. So, like, I'm not necessarily trying to lose, like, pounds. I'm trying to lose fat and replace it with muscle. So you don't get that, like, gaunt feeling. But when I was the final, like, few months that I was living in Jersey, I basically had no money. I was eating beans and rice every single day at my extended stay hotel where I was being put up off, like, the Red Bank Turnpike. It was not a great scene for me, but I lost, like, so much weight over the course of 3. I lost like 20 pounds over 3 months, and I didn't have that much weight. And I remember going home in between moving back to Toronto, and my grandmother looked at me. She's like, "What happened to you? Like, you look gaunt." So if you lose a lot of weight just basically through starvation and not eating, and, like, I was still, like, running and working out, so that was probably adding to it, but not building muscle at the same time, you get that sort of, like, compressed look on your face.
Right. Right. I have heard that criticism of
I mean,
Ozempic too.
is it a criticism? I mean, people are fine looking like that. Then
It is. It is if you're burning muscle. You're a dude and you're burning muscle. That kind of sucks. Like if you know you lose, it makes you lose 25 pounds, but 20 of that was like your muscle. I don't know. Like, who knows? They probably don't put those type guys on that, anyways.
well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you can probably. I'm not completely familiar with how the U.S. pharmaceutical companies work, but I mean, if you wanted to get like a script, you probably could.
Yeah, they work by making money,
Yeah.
so as much as humanly possible.
So you're going to get a lot of people. So like, let's say me, for example, and I wanted to drop 10 pounds right away. Like, oh, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. Like I got a bit too much fat on the go. And this is why when I kind of pointed out Southern California, that it wasn't so much old. I was thinking skewing young because there's probably like 25-year-olds who are doing cardio on Ozempic and lifting to try to get like an 8-pack so they can be a model or whatever they are. Just the naturally burning or unnaturally burning the fat that way to help them out. That I could see doing that, but then like you have to continue. Then you would need like another injector for like high testosterone or something so you can put the muscle back on or at least have the capability. It all just seems like one of these scenarios where I do think like if you're like very large and it's very hard to work out, like that's always the biggest thing. Like, you know, when you go to the gym in the new year and you see people that are like 350, 400 pounds, like there's only so much mobility that they can have. And a lot of them can, like, it's very easy to give up in that sense that if you did have something like as a Kickstarter, like Ozempic, that quelled what you were going to eat and you were able to knock off like 25, 30, 40 pounds right away, it would make the process of starting to exercise a lot easier, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Generally the idea, I'm all for it. Go for it. You know, if you're in that spot, or even the guy you were talking about earlier who's just trying to get ripped and has to add roids on top of it, you know what? Have at it, kid, if that's what you want. And those guys at the gym, you know, who are like wearing like jean shorts and they're, 350 pounds, whatever. I really respect those guys. Like I wish they would get, like more positive feedback for like having the balls to go in the gym.
See, someone I've probably been going to the gym. I actually bought most stuff for my house now. Like I got a treadmill at home, I got weights at home, so I don't go to the gym all that often. Like there's certain things like once or twice a week that I want to go do at the gym. But I've always found the gym, maybe it's the ones that I've gone to, are actually like a incredibly positive place. Like I think a lot of, and I'm sure that there's outlier examples that everyone can point to. You can find that with anything. But I do think that when people say it's like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym because people will be looking at me, they'll be gawking at me, they'll be talking behind my back. I think a lot of that is like self-talk, to talk yourself out of going to start, because I've never really actually, most people at the gym are there because they're, I don't want to say giant narcissists, but they're there to make themselves look better. They don't really care what you're doing.
For sure. You know what really drove this home for me, and I assume for you too, or any content creator. I'm not really a content creator, but yeah, I do a little
you
bit.
do a very popular show, Lols, on Peter Overzet's YouTube channel. You can download the Lols podcast. There's your plug. You are a content creator.
Okay, I am a content creator. Is it's really hard to get people to care at all about anything. So like when you're sitting there, like, oh my God, this person's going to think I'm an idiot or something like that. 99% of the time, not only do they not care, they won't even put in effort. Like if you try to get them to care. So like, I think just being humbled by doing content a little bit is a nice little lesson for that neurotic part of your brain to be like, oh my God, at the gym, nobody cares. Like, except, of course, there's always some jerk, somebody who will ruin it for the rest of us. But the majority of people, just like there's jerks on social media who respond to you with like the weirdest, dumbest stuff. And you're just like, why did you, ruin my life for those 8 seconds of me reading this tweet response? But for the most part, it's hard enough to get someone to like your tweet or click on a link, much less, care about what you're wearing at the gym or something like that.
Yeah, and just people are so self-focused, especially now in 2024, that, yeah, just, if you're on the treadmill, you're on the treadmill, like whatever. And I know that one thing that I think the gym should actually do a little bit better, because this is some of the things that I've heard from some of my friends who want to go to the gym. They're like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to use the machines. I don't know what to do. And I do think that there are like introductory things, but you really need to go out of your way to find the person to tell you. Like there should be someone on staff, or at least have a sign like, hey, if you're new to the gym, come in at like, here's a morning version of this. Here's a night version of this in case you're a morning person or you work in the morning, you have to go in the evening. I just think that would facilitate like just allowing people to be more comfortable there.
That's a good idea. Yeah. The easiest way is to find a buddy. You know, when I first started going, my buddy, worked out religiously, and I'm like, can I just come with you? And I just followed his routine we worked out for, this is years ago, but like 6 months. And then ever since, I've just been basically doing his routine, since, with some minor variations. It's like, he's got huge muscles. He looks good. He's not doing roids. So I'll just copy it.
I mean, that's usually what I do. Like, even when I'm at the gym and I see like in shape person doing a workout that I don't do, it's like, well, what the fuck is that guy doing? Just like, look how he's doing it. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll incorporate that in. And I found that like Instagram reels are actually really good for that. Now there's some like really terrible ones, but in terms of like patching together like a shoulder workout, like, okay, here are 2 different variations of shoulder workouts that I can do by taking one exercise from this reel, one exercise from this reel. It gets hard to keep track of everything, but you can take I just take like a quick screenshot of it and put it in my phone to figure it out. And I felt like since I've started doing that, I actually work out my entire body, because there's like, I don't know, because people are like, oh yeah, look at the chicken legs on this guy. He never does a leg workout. And like, I find that, I mean, I also know some people who basically only do leg workouts and they don't do any arm workouts or chest workouts. I would think that most people do chest and arms, and like that might be all they do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little guilty of this myself.
Through the show muscles.
I have naturally skinny legs, especially my calves too, like my dad does. And so I really, really should be putting more effort into legs. But oh my God, it's so annoying and painful. So like, I broke my ankle really bad like 7 years ago. So it's a pain in the ass doing any leg stuff.
Yeah, well, you said that it's very hard to get people to like click on links or do anything like that, but people should go and download the Underdog app and use code Mayo to get themselves a deposit bonus of $100 for all first-time depositors. That would very much help out the show. We're going to be running some listeners leagues up on Underdog. There's Major Season Best Ball on the go. There's Pick'em in over 30 states right now, and they got some like live stuff up there for golf. Like, there's some pretty soft markets. At Run the Sims, I just released a DFS strategy video on how to use the tools at runthesims.com for F1, but it seems like their F1 markets are kind of soft on a few people, so you can really beat it. So code Mayo at Underdog, and if you fill out the survey that's down in the description right now, the video or the podcast, you're going to be entered into a draw, which I think is going to be up to $5,000 coming very soon. I think it'll be like $1,000 for 5 winners, something like that. So it takes 15 seconds. I would recommend that you do it, but you need to have an Underdog account. So sign up for the Underdog account with code Mayo and then fill out the 15-second survey, and you could win bigly, as it turns out. So I'm working on these ad reads in the middle of the show now to see, to please the new sponsor, Brian.
Okay. I have like a auto like Trump meme whenever someone posts a funny Trump meme. I don't know why, it always just cracks me up. I mean, I'm not like a big fan or anything, but it does it for me.
So you worked in politics for a while, right?
Yeah.
So
7 years or so.
Yeah, and that was at the state level?
At the state level, yeah. But one agency I worked for was federally funded, but it's a state-federal partnership. But so my boss was the governor technically, but we got our money from the feds.
Okay.
Just a weird part of the law.
All right. So I guess my question is, do these people actually have any clue, or do they just don't care?
About gambling or everything?
Just everything.
They don't know. They don't know anything. No, they know about fundraising and
so they're sales people
in politics, and like playing the game, because there's a lot of internal politics too. So like one of the years I was at that agency I just referenced, I sat down with one of the freshman senators, and it was like after hours, right? We were just in her office, BSing. She was cool. And she's like, I think I'm done after this. And it was her freshman year. She's like, I'm like, well, tell me why. She's like, because I don't do anything. I don't get anything done. And so like but it's not like it's because you have to play the game. So like there's certain people who are even in power within the power structure. So like it's usually the Speaker of the House and the Senate President if you have a bicameral state legislature, which almost all the states do except Nebraska. And they have like extra authority to put you on a committee, which will actually increase your pay and get you in, vote on important bills that will get, the right donors in front of your face and stuff like that. And so, like, if you don't caucus with them, they're just going to leave you out of the loop, and they just won't talk to you. Like, but even getting to that point, you're like super vetted. Like they're like the idea that you're, of the whole democracy thing is just pure bullshit. After you work there, like all these candidates are heavily vetted. Because I worked at a political fundraising company before I worked for the government. So we had like 60 candidates in the state of Illinois. And so I saw how that like these people were selected. And so like if like Pat Mayo wants to run for office, just hypothetically in Illinois, you don't just put your name in the ballot and then you're on there and you could go on your show and say, hey, vote for me. Does not work that way. Right? Like you have to get approved by the party leaders, a lot of different special interests like unions and stuff like that. And you'll get sent like 100 different forms. Ugh. And like, what do you think about this, Pat? What do you think about this law? What do you think about this? And if you answer those incorrectly, you're not getting on. And the fundraiser will drop you. The fundraiser is not going to help you raise funds if you're, not part of the team.
Now, is this
so like?
Is this across?
It's like a false choice.
So, but is this like across the nation, or is this like crooked Illinois type?
I can't imagine it's any different because the incentives and consequences are the same everywhere. It's the same. It's this exact same structure in every single state. Like they don't like they all have to fundraise. I think the times will change. Honestly, like. I think my prediction is, strangely enough, I think podcasters will eventually be getting a lot of more federal positions. Local is less likely since no one knows anything about it and they don't vote for it. But it would be easier to win those elections because I think we live in like kind of like a new trustless society where no one's trusting any of the old sources, but they heavily trust the podcasters and YouTubers, et cetera, that they follow. And so, like, if those people who have a following start running for office, I think they can easily win compared to the alternative, which is usually just a machine candidate. So, like, I think that's the direction it's going to go. I could be wrong, but that's my guess.
Do you think Biden's going to make it to the election?
I say I'm putting like 15% chance he doesn't.
I mean, that's a pretty high percentage.
Yes. He's pretty old, though.
Yeah. And he doesn't even have his own sneakers.
He's damn old. He's going to be 86 if he wins and finishes out his term.
I don't think anyone's like thinking he's finishing out this term. Like, I'm just looking at the odds right now. Trump's even money to win. Biden's 2 plus 220. Like, Harris is 18-1. Like, it's going to be her if it's not Biden. Like, there'd just be no time, is there?
I tweeted that out. Yeah, she was like 40-1 or something when I tweeted it out. I'm like, because everyone says if Biden well, the time thing is like irrelevant because the National Committee, Democratic National Committee, is actually here in Chicago this year.
Oh boy, and that sounds crooked.
Well, I mean, the 1969 one was kind of infamous. So the idea would be, in my opinion, it would be something like. They get Obama to, fly over to him and be like, well, come on. Like, you can't do this, right? And then he just put pressure on him from people he likes and talk to his wife and be like, just resign here. And then we'll pick somebody new at the convention. And so then you don't even have to bother with these stupid voters, you just get it done with the delegates at the convention. And so then they'll just pick the person. And the rumor, the YouTubers and everything think it's going to be Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think they can pass over Kamala.
Which, I mean, I don't know if she would win or not. Like, probably like Newsom's probably the better choice to try to win, wouldn't he be? Not that people like him, but he just seems people have enough experience with Harris on a national level, and just I
think Michelle Obama would have a shot.
Oh yeah, I think Michelle Obama would win. I don't think she'd ever run though.
Yeah. I think there's a chance she would run.
Did you follow this Dean Phillips guy at all through like the primaries?
Barely at all. Like they were trying, like the progressives were trying to church him up, but man, he didn't do well.
No. Like I actually thought Haley would do better in the primaries, at least in the open primaries. Like in New Hampshire, she did like all right, and like I thought she'd do okay in her home state in South Carolina. It just Trump might be a runaway freight train here.
I mean, I definitely think he's the favorite. Like
when he's the betting favorite.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like 4 or 5 points, the polls are showing. I just looked earlier, plus 4, 5, 6, something like that. Like that seems about right to me.
But do the national polls actually mean anything? Because this happens in Canada all the time, where like the Conservative Party always, I mean, generally speaking, and they're probably going to win a majority this time around with the way that it's looking with the Liberal Party right now in Canada, and that's going to be coming up very soon. But like, if Trump is ahead by 5, let's say, and maybe it ends up coming out in the wash anyway because Biden will win by so much in New York and California, and then like the 90-10 splits in some of the red states will be enough to just kind of wash it out that way. But wouldn't really basically swing state specific stuff be the actual thing you should be looking at?
Certainly. I probably should have been more specific. I was talking about those like 6 swing states that matter. I looked at today on the Real Clear Politics aggregate polls. So like, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, and I might be forgetting one. He was up in all of them today. And that's, I think, the first time in the cycle in all of them he's been up. But now he's like up in 5 points in Michigan, 5 points in Wisconsin, was it? I don't know. And the other ones was just like 1 or 2 points. But yeah. So even in the states that matter, he's doing well. And I think the betting markets, because we have to take into account, he's under indictment for like up to 900 years in prison if all of them get convicted, and you have to factor that in when you're betting, right? Like they could take him off the ballot. They just tried in Illinois yesterday, so we'll see how. I'm assuming that's going to get knocked down by the Illinois Supreme Court, if not the federal Supreme Court. So what is there, like 5% chance that he's not on the ballot? What do you think? What would you put that at?
I would say lower. I think
lower than that.
I just think that you have to put some sort of context into it, that they're going to push all this stuff until after the election. And if he doesn't win the election, then they might end up sending him to jail with all this stuff. But obviously if he wins, he'll just pardon himself. And that should just really be his campaign. Just like, yeah, I'm running so I can pardon myself from crimes.
Some of these he can't though.
He can't?
He might not be able to go into Georgia as the president. like
that doesn't even make any sense.
Right. Yeah.
So like, I have no idea. Like anything surrounding Trump, just I don't understand ever. That it's like it operates on a different plane than everyone else has to operate on.
It's like both interesting and scary, at the same time. Of that. Yeah. When he was first elected, I was, still a gigantic liberal working for a liberal government and state agency in Illinois, living in Chicago. And it did freak me out, embarrassingly enough, because now after, he served 4 years and kind of I really feel like I was just like just a fool, like a brainwashed fool for a lot of things I used to believe and work for and knock on doors for, that I don't think he's this 5D chess guy that like the Trump cultists think he is by a long shot. And we could talk about that too. But so he's like, I don't care that he says bad things, I don't care that he says grab him by the pussy. And I think there's no evidence that he's, after the 4 years, that he's like gonna nuke another country or anything like that. Like, I think it's all propaganda. I don't care if he wins or loses.
He actually seemed like the most isolationist president since Woodrow Wilson.
He he didn't start any new wars, which for an American president is actually like a pacifist. You know, he didn't start any new wars, and he started started the Afghan withdrawal and almost got it done, but then it carried over into the Biden presidency where he eventually pulled it out. But yeah, like it's I don't understand. Like there's no evidence for the claims that he's going to end democracy and nuke China or something like that. Like, because we have 4 years of evidence now. You could say that in 2016, but you can't really say that anymore. And I think some voters maybe see it the same way. But again, like when I watch the average Trump voter, they're completely delusional that this guy, in my opinion, hey, vote for him, don't for him, I don't care. But that this guy is this 5D chess swamp drainer, right? That's going to come in and clean house. When the 4 years of evidence we have, he hired every single like neocon establishment person, like Nikki Haley for saying, like 6 of the people he was running against at the beginning of this campaign were people he hired. John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, Nikki Haley, missing probably 2 more. But like you hired these guys and they hate your guts, and they're all old school Republican establishment people that all MAGA people hate. So like he didn't drain the swamp. He didn't build a border. He got played like a fiddle by the media. They completely held his power in check all 4 years. He couldn't really do anything. He couldn't maneuver. And if he's this 5D chess playing person, he would have been able to angle his way into getting things done, and he didn't. Right? So like just by the evidence of what happened, you can't give him that much credibility.
Trump is the guy that we talked about at the beginning, who's at the gym, who's only staring at himself.
Right. Yeah. In the MAGA person's mind, I will give him this. There's like a chance he could hire this time. He could hire someone who could get some of their agenda down. I'm not saying I agree with any of it, but like from their perspective, like you want to drain the swamp and build the border. Okay. So like maybe he can put someone in charge that's capable of doing that. Like Vivek Ramaswamy, maybe as VP or chair.
But if you think that like Trump doesn't stand for anything anyway, which he just kind of stands for Trump, like Vivek seems like the more extreme version of that. He's just like, yeah, I'm Vivek, give me some power. What do you need me to say?
Have you ever heard of the PayPal Mafia?
No.
This is an interesting group, I think, that's influencing politics pretty heavily now. And then like kind of the weird political circles of YouTube that I follow, they've been talking about this in the last couple months. The PayPal Mafia is on Google. You could Google it. It's basically the old PayPal guys: Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Reid Hoffman. God, I'm forgetting a couple other people. Like Vivek Ramaswamy's kind of in that circle, and so they seem to be kind of creating this, without saying it, new anti-establishment group of rich billionaires. Because even though, you wouldn't think Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are like communicating every day, they kind of act in a way that they were. And I'm not saying that they're in a smoke-filled room or anything. I just think they have similar belief structures of that kind of late 90s libertarian Silicon Valley-esque mindset that like Peter Thiel has and stuff. And so I think now Reid Hoffman's a huge Democrat. He's funding Nikki Haley's campaign. So he's not in the group. But I do think there is some sort of like counter elite happening. Now, again, I'm not saying these are the guys, these are my guys, or they're definitely gonna do everything I want. But I kind of think that group is forming, and they might be influencing Trump behind the scenes. Now, who knows if any of that's true, but I wouldn't put like Vivek just like alone as his own thing. I really put him in this like kind of new category. David Sachs is kind of in that group. And I think they're pulling along some other people. And so like Elon's an interesting case where he's at the point where either he's kind of like Trump in some ways, where either he's going to get destroyed by these people or he's going to destroy them. I don't think he can withdraw from politics at this point. Like I'm not saying he's going to run for office, but like I don't think he can withdraw and just go and just run his businesses and that's it. Like they're, they held that one judge in Delaware held $55 billion from him. That's war, right? Disney and a whole bunch of other lefty type of businesses withdrawing all ad revenue from Twitter when they needed it the most. He's at war. They're trying to destroy him.
Now, okay, so this is something I've seen painted, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with it or not. Like Disney as a left-wing company. Now, they've had feuds with, in Florida, especially with DeSantis, and they seemingly mopped the floor with him and their team of lawyers. But I don't think it had anything to do with, ideology in terms of Disney with Elon. It's just, you're basically trying to start a media company. We're a media company. We're not funding you.
Yeah, but why would they stop?
Because, until Elon took it over, it didn't feel like Twitter was a viable threat to actually steal people from Disney.
You think they stopped because Twitter's stealing people from Disney?
I think that in the long run, the long game of Twitter, I can probably upload this entire video to Twitter right now. They hire Tucker Carlson and they, afford him the luxury of going to Russia and have this exclusive content that it's not necessarily like 1v1, hey, I'm going to take your Disney subscriber and we're just going to watch stuff on Twitter right now. But if there's engaging enough video content on Twitter and they can expand, especially into kids stuff, long term, or at least create a different branch of that, that's going to hurt Disney's bottom line.
I think that's a stretch.
Okay.
Now listen, I think you're right that maybe long term they could, but I think it's a stretch making that correlation to why they immediately removed after Elon took over. A month later, they removed all their ads because that 10 years from now, Elon's going to do that. I don't see it.
Maybe they were just trying to kneecap him anyway. They're like, hey, here comes this existential threat with all of this money, enough money and assets to compete and rival with us in just not necessarily business, but whatever in business, not necessarily media, whatever it is, if we can take him out now. Because remember at the very advent of him taking it over, people were wondering, does he even have enough money to have all these shares? Are they going to go under? Is this platform not going to exist? That maybe they thought they could have a knockout blow against him right away. Or it could be completely optics as well, because Disney does partake in that a lot of the time. But all they really care about is making money, and whatever the easiest way for them to make the most money is going to be, whether it's playing optics, playing politics, whatever it is. I'm sure that their bottom line just needs to go up. That's the only thing they care about. If they were really what would you say is the most right wing sports organization? The UFC?
Yes.
And who's UFC in business with?
And what?
Who's UFC in business with in terms of the?
No, you're going to say Bud Light, right?
No, I was going to say their main broadcast partner is ESPN, which is a Disney organization.
That's true. Yeah. So
does ESPN?
Really so you're saying it's not? It's that. Well, that's true, but I imagine they're contractually obligated.
They are, but ESPN engaged in that with them. That is, the UFC is helping save whatever remnants.
When did that contract happen? I think it matters because if that contract was, more than 3 or 4 years ago, the world's a lot different.
ESPN UFC contract. I would be shocked, and maybe they end up losing it because with TKO owning UFC and WWE now, and WWE signing that big deal with Netflix, it actually makes sense that there could be a UFC shift to Netflix along with WWE once that happens. But if ESPN Plus loses UFC, that could be curtains for ESPN Plus. Yeah.
And, good riddance.
I don't have ESPN Plus. It's only an American thing. Is it any good?
Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that. ESPN Plus is all right. I just have a stick up my ass against ESPN. They used to be religious, a religious, what's it called? Habit, to watch SportsCenter every day and Baseball Tonight. And it just turned into such a shit show. And that's before all this kind of more political, all these companies became politicalized.
So UFC signed a 5-year deal with ESPN starting in 2019 that runs through 2025.
Okay, fair enough. I still think that that still applies. I think the really crazy stuff started probably in 2020, 2021, something like that. Certainly Elon's part in it all. And I imagine there's a lot going on behind the scenes in that relationship. I think if Elon was the opposite, like a lot of his beliefs were the opposite, I bet Disney would have no problem with him. I bet if he was supporting, Biden wholeheartedly and, like there was no words allowed on Twitter or something, he would be, how he was like the lefties, Tony Stark. He was their hero.
And
Why'd
now
that
somehow-
change?
Yeah, who is that person now? I mean, how? I guess the craziest thing to me would be that if you have a billionaire who's out there, unless it's the benevolent billionaire, how many of them are going to be super lefties? None of them? What would be their interest to be a super lefty? Unless you were the most benevolent person alive. And in fact, if you were that benevolent, you wouldn't have a fucking $1 billion to begin with. You would have never made it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, lefty is a wide, all-encompassing term. So, like, yeah, if you're going communist, like, of course they would have never made it. But, like,
I mean, I hear this thrown out all the time. Like, just, this is communist. That is communist. I feel like people just in general, when they're calling things communist, they don't actually know what communism is.
I agree with you 100%. But like you just said, they wouldn't make it. So yeah, like they wouldn't make it in like a communist society. But like there's also cultural leftism, right? Not just financial, not just so like you could have, like you think businesses should be well regulated, but also I believe every single lefty, cultural thing, hardcore, pro life, egalitarianism is essentially the central tenet. You could really kind of separate the two into those two things these days: egalitarianism, and then everyone else is on the right.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot how the media does divide people. Although I really do think that the majority of people have kind of branched off. Like the different poles of the political spectrum on the right and the left are just more extreme than they used to be. The majority of people just sit somewhere either center, left of center, right of center. Like, just how it's going to be. People don't care that much. It's just people you tend to hear from care a lot. So it makes it seem like everyone cares.
Right. And I should have specified, like, we're talking about the PayPal mafia here. We're talking about, and when we started this conversation, I was explaining at the state level, it works the same way at the federal level. I'm sure there's only a few people that matter, right? There's the elites. All you can hope for is that the people and institutions and corporations that have power without consequences share your preferences. As a peon, which I am, and sadly you are too, Pat. We have no say here, and so part of this is the strategy. I think is to divide us. But yeah, I'm talking about cultural elites and people and institutions with power. I would say the majority of those institutions are egalitarian, and less so the other ones, and some of them maybe are neutral. But like I still like I think we went off the train about the concept of Elon. Really was more not to talk about Disney, was more about I think he's in a fight for his, quote unquote life. So, I don't think he's really, he's not going to die, most likely, but they will try to destroy him. Right. And they've sort of made this clear with Trump that they will try everything they can if they feel like you're a threat, which, by the way, I'm going to say was a big mistake. They way overplayed their hand on Trump. They should have played it more like George W. Bush, make him a big buffoon, make SNL making fun of him all the time. But behind the scenes, you kind of kiss his ass because he'll be like, the guy loves being complimented. So you like just compliment him and be like, maybe we should work on healthcare. Oh, and you look good today. Did you lose some weight? Oh, yeah, you sound smart. Okay, let's talk about that. Like they should have played him like that without going full court press, ruin his life, ruin his kid's life. Because the worst thing you can do I'm thinking from their side, although I'm not on it, is to make him a martyr. And if he loses or goes to jail, for sure, you just made yourself a martyr.
Yeah. I would
So,
tend to,
like,
I
I
would
think
tend
they
to agree with.
overplay their
I mean,
hand.
I would agree with you there. Yeah, and then you not only like when you do murderize someone, then all of a sudden like that even galvanizes the base even more to get fired up and to come out like that. That's gonna be the interesting part, I think, in the turnout of this election. Like last time, so many people came out to vote against Trump. No one really gave a shit about Biden. It seemed like it was just like there's the people who want to vote for Trump, and then the people who want to make sure that Trump is never president again. And it was like what? It was close to an all-time turnout, wasn't it? Or was it an all-time turnout?
It was.
So let's just say that that's not going to happen again. That let's say minus 15% off the total vote in a lot of these places. Like it's, I would guess most of that. Like, can you still mail in ballot, or was that only for COVID times?
You can still mail in ballots, yeah.
That's a huge that's a huge win. Although it should be a huge win, I think for the Republicans, they did not embrace it at all because they discourage people from doing it. But it's just making it easier to vote. Just to lean into it a little bit, and I think you'd be fine.
Yeah, yeah. But to your point too about the voter turnout, I think you're right. I think that's going to happen because Biden had 4 years. It's a lot different when you don't know what he's going to do. And then you go like, 4 years, was it great? The enthusiasm level isn't there. And you got to throw in RFK at this point. I don't know how it plays out, but I do think he's going to take some votes if he gets on ballots.
But does he? Is this going to work like Ross Perot? Because everyone kind of at the time, and I don't know if retroactively when people have gone back and looked at it, whether they're right or wrong. I don't actually know the data behind it. But it was kind of like the common suggestion that at the time in 1992 that Ross Perot took enough votes away from George Bush that Bill Clinton ended up winning. But with hindsight and 16 years later, and you go back and look at it, it's like, well, he just kind of took away enough votes from both sides that he was kind of a wash anyway, and he maybe didn't actually impact anything. RFK is interesting because I think he would probably take, it's not like, oh, here's super lefty RFK. He's going to take all these Democrat votes. I feel like he's just going to take both votes from both sides.
I agree. I kind of vacillate on the averages. I was first I thought it's just you figure uninformed boomer Democrats will see Robert F. Kennedy on the ballot and they click that button. But he's very populist, and a lot of his, he's anti-vaccine, or he wouldn't say that. He's anti
he wouldn't say that now on the
companies.
campaign trail. He may have said that 15 years ago.
Maybe, but I think he's just anti-vaccines that don't work. He would say and I think he's more like anti-pharmaceutical company. But there's other he's anti-war, which now MAGA's anti-war, which is great. But there's other things too, where then I thought he would take more votes for Trump. And then now I'm like, I don't know, it's probably about even. But I think either way, Biden's not getting, 70, 80 million votes again.
Yeah, but will Trump get as many this time around?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the market. I think that line's pretty good for Trump.
But it felt like if you threw a competent, warm body against Trump, they would win as a Democrat right now.
Yeah, they don't have one, and they need someone who's going to do whatever they say. Who I thought would be an outside chance candidate for a Democratic National Convention replacement? Mark Cuban.
But is he even a Democrat? Or is he like Trump, who used to be a Democrat? He's like, I can win as a Republican. I'll be a Republican.
I think his battle with Elon kind of shows he's like, he wants to be this tough, businessman lefty kind of vibe.
Do you think that's why he sold the Mavs?
That's the first thing I thought when he sold the Mavs. It's like, this guy, he's doing it. Because I remember when he was people were floating the idea of Cuban a couple years ago. The first thing I did was Google how he is on war. And I couldn't find one comment he made about Iraq or Afghanistan. Not one fucking comment. Now, maybe I'm not the greatest Googler on the planet, but you figure the guy who was outspoken would say something somewhere.
Oh, see, I don't think so. Because that would have been right around the time that was what, 2002, 2003? Like, not that it didn't extend past.
Yeah,
that,
the war just ended.
Yeah, well, I get that, but like, it's not like people had like real hard takes on Afghanistan, like that they were just offering up in 2013 kind of thing.
But you do if you have your eye on being president.
I see. I don't think that he ever had his eye on being president, but I think that when Trump got traction and then actually won, I think a lot of these guys who are, self-made billionaires or huge tech whatever, they're like, oh, like this is like an actual option. I think a lot of them had it in their minds like, hey, I have a lot of sense. There's no way we would ever win and be able to break in, through different, like you said, filling out 45 forms and fundraisers can kick you off. If they have the money to do this themselves and fundraise at the same time and be able to somewhat circumvent the system, I just think it didn't occur to a lot of them that they could actually do that. Or they would want, like, it seems like a fucking hassle, man, being president. It seems like the worst.
Yeah, but you're normal. Like these people aren't normal. I remember one of my first jobs out of college. I worked one day. It was selling door-to-door sports like package tickets things. Like it was like you get 10 tickets for nine, the price of 9, some dumb thing like that. And this guy was showing me the first day. He showed me how it goes. And like after like the third door, I'm like, I'm going to be quitting tomorrow. But anyways, I was just bullshitting with him because I had to be there all day, even though I knew I was never coming back. And I'm like, well, what do you want to do when you go? He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I want to be president of the United States. And I just started laughing in his face because that's a completely ridiculous thing for a guy knocking on doors to be saying. But I think that is more like closer to Mark Cuban, is like some of these people, they've been thinking it since they were kids. Who knows though? Maybe he saw something that changed his worldview or whatever. I don't get the love in the DFS community over him at all.
I mean, that's a pretty easy one. He engages with people in the DFS community. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Great.
I mean, you just talked about Trump. Like, hey, just gas him up a little bit. Hey, you look great. Talk to him for a few minutes, and he's on your side. You don't think that like 99% of us are exactly the same way?
I mean, if he bought my company, for $10-20 million, maybe I'd be like, maybe he should run for president. He makes smart choices. But yeah, I guess he knows what DFS is, so that's something. But he's just trying to make a fucking buck off of gambling, and I think he's overrated, like intelligence wise. He's got no interesting policy positions. He's never said anything on any war. He's just, he got super lucky selling that company to Yahoo in the beginning to make all his money. He's like the guy who won a Millie Maker once,
but at the beginning, and was able to turn that into a DFS company.
No, he got like what, $500 million for that?
I think he got over $1 billion for it. I think it was like
broadcast.com. Yeah, he got a ton. So like he was set. He couldn't screw that up. Who's the idiot?
$5.7 billion.
Not really. Okay. Yeah. Who? That is an argument for communism right there. Some idiot paid $9.7 billion in 2000. What was that? Probably like 2000.
1999.
99. My God. So he just luck boxed.
He cashed out at the right time.
Elon got like $250 million for his PayPal involvement, I think.
But how much did he own of that?
I think quite a bit, because he merged his original X company with PayPal. They were competitive.
Like I can use PayPal here. What's the other PayPal that's just like America only? Venmo, is that it?
Oh yeah, there's a Venmo. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't Venmo you money, but I can PayPal you money. I feel like that's the scale of PayPal versus the other PayPal like knockoffs.
Interesting.
Like being in another country, I can use PayPal.
But like broadcast.com or whatever it was worthless.
I don't even know what it was.
It's been a great, huge company for 25 years since he left, or however long ago it was.
I feel like Yahoo made all these like acquisitions, especially around that time, and they've still done it. I can't tell you what Yahoo does. Like, they were a search engine that was bigger than Google, and now, like, they're not. So who cares? I used to only play fantasy sports on Yahoo, and like, they had the best product by far, and like, they didn't do anything with that. Like, they have a DFS product, and apparently they have a sports book. I don't know any. You probably play on Yahoo because you grind just everything into the ground, but like, I don't know really anyone who plays Yahoo Fantasy daily fantasy.
Yeah, I recently just stopped, honestly, but yeah, Yahoo was great for a while, DFS wise. But I mean, these CEOs, they suck. Like, a lot of them, they just don't care.
But it feels like that Yahoo should be out of business though, because what have they done in the past 25 years besides basically being minor league Google now?
I don't know. I don't know how they stay in business. It's a good question.
Their shares still like worth stuff. I guess maybe they probably own a lot that, like, not that we don't know, it's just we're just not thinking of.
That's probably it. They just probably keep Yahoo going. It might make money somehow, and then they made some investments here or there that are keeping them alive.
Did you when I sent you the list of things that we might want to talk about, did you Google a picture of that Mini Cooper turning signal?
No, actually, that was the last thing on the list. Let me do it.
I'm going to send you a picture of this right now. I'm going to bring it up on the screen for people to see. I got caught behind one of these the other day, and it like wigged me out. It makes no sense. I don't know who thought how this got through a design process. Let's see. Oh, come on, Twitter, work. There we go. It's just a Google image that I threw up.
Got it. Okay, all right.
All right, and now everyone can see my DMs I just sent because I clicked over on the wrong tab here, so I'll have to edit that part out after the fact. There we go. So it's a turning signal, but the signal itself is the opposite of the way you're supposed to be turning. Like, it points the wrong way. So, like, I get that it's from the left side, you're turning left, but the arrow is pointing to the right. It is... I just instinctively, when you look at it, it's like, oh, they're turning right.
Why would someone do this?
I don't know.
But
how could that get off the assembly line? And someone had to test this. And you look at it, and it's the first thing you think of is that they're turning right.
I asked ChatGPT, why does the turn signal on the Mini Cooper Countryman point the wrong way? And he says the turn signal on a Mini Cooper Countryman or any vehicle should not be pointing in the wrong direction. Incorrect bulb installation. No, it looks like that is the manufacturing, right?
Yeah, that's how I've seen a few of them on the roads now. And there must be someone in my neighborhood that has one because I've seen like the same one over and over. And every single time I fuck it up. Like, I just think, oh yeah, they're going right. It's like, oh no, they're going left.
Yeah, that looks like an accident waiting to happen.
I just, whose idea was this?
I don't know. That's ridiculous. I wonder if it's like that in the States because I've never seen that.
I don't know. I would think so. Like this, I don't think this is just a purely Canadian thing. I would assume it's Mini Coopers across. I mean, how many Mini Coopers do you really see?
Not a lot.
I mean, the Italian job was like 25 years ago. You know, like that was like the apex of Mini Coopers.
Have you heard about like the EVs getting like less popular and their sales going down? Have you heard anything like that?
I haven't. I mean, I think the last time I saw any sort of research report on anything that like EV percentage for like even a lot of the bigger manufacturers, like 25% now, like of their inventory, which is huge.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, like I just saw something about interest levels going down and some car companies like changing their plans for mass producing some of the models. I mean, this winter was pretty brutal for EVs here because the winter was really mild, but we had like a couple weeks where it was like minus 20. And the EVs just do not handle that.
Oh, they don't? So they'd be horrible in certain parts of Canada.
Right. That's what I was just going to say. I imagine in Canada, they must be less popular.
I mean, around here, it's not so bad. Like being on, I'm trying to describe the Halifax climate. It's really weird because we're east of Maine, but we're directly on the ocean. Like we can get hit with like weird hurricanes a lot. Like we can have some massive windstorms, and we got dumped on with like 4 feet of snow. It's the most snow I've seen in like 25 years. But like that's such a rare occurrence that it doesn't actually get all that cold here. It's like slightly colder Seattle is how I would describe it. Like it rains a lot, but it's just cold enough that sometimes you get freezing rain, but you don't get like the -20, like not -20 Fahrenheit, not -20 Celsius. Like I would say that like in the wintertime, the weather vacillates in terms of Fahrenheit between like 25 and 40 kind of thing. Like it's not 0 or -20. Like when I lived in Toronto, we would have those sorts of days. Sort of like where you're at in Chicago, 2 lakes over, Toronto's on the upper side on the water on Lake Ontario. Like sometimes if the wind changes direction, it's like -50 out.
So you're not getting like, 10 feet of snow?
I mean, we did get 4 feet of snow like in a half a night. Like I said, like 3-4 weeks ago, but that was the first time it had snowed all year, I think.
Huh. Where are you a Canada man for life, or are you planning eventually changing up?
I mean, now that I'm married with kids, like all my family lives here. That's the reason that we live here. That it just was like we owned a condo in downtown Toronto because, my wife and I, we both live downtown. We decided, hey, let's get together. We decided to live together first. Like, hey, let's see if this works. Because, if we're going to live together forever, maybe we should like live together for a year before we get married, just to see if that's something that's somewhat compatible. So we had a place downtown. We ended up buying a place. But as soon as we had kids, like our place was awesome for 2 people. Even with one kid, like it was fine, but there's like no yard. You live in the middle of a concrete jungle. And then when we had a second kid, we had a 2-bedroom condo, but like once he wasn't able to sleep with us anymore, like it just became a whole thing. Like we need space. We have no family up here. So now we have to pay people if we ever want to go out, and that stuff's not cheap. Like, for example, like where I live now is experiencing like a huge, like a lot of not major cities, but like the tiered down major cities. And I'm not quite sure if it's happening in the States or not, but it's happening around Canada. Like Toronto and Vancouver were like basically priced out of everything. They were the most expensive, like they were top 5 most expensive places to live in North America, along with San Francisco, basically the entire Bay Area, Manhattan, and like whatever else is up there, because everyone, and there was a ton of Chinese investment in a lot of these places as well, especially Vancouver being on the West Coast, that it just became basically unaffordable for a lot of people to live. So during COVID, a lot of people exited Toronto and just moved to the rest of the country. But because work from home was a thing, they just basically just brought all like, I didn't technically bring my job with me because I could do this from anywhere, really. I just bought another house here to have as my studio instead of leasing a place like I did in Toronto. But I was able to buy a giant house for less than the price of my condo in Toronto. And I'm one of 37 people I know that I grew up with, that moved back to Halifax during COVID. So it's super expensive to buy a house here now, but everything else is so cheap. I was paying over $5,000 a month for childcare when I was in Toronto. That's an outrageous amount that no one can really afford. And that was for 2 kids. The same daycare here. I mean, it's not as good of a daycare, mind you, but there were fewer waiting lists, and it costs like $900 a month. Like just the savings there alone is worth moving here. I don't need to send my kids to private school. They can go to public school here because the public schools are really good.
I mean, just thinking about those costs of a normal person makes it like, I don't know, how people vote. It makes it like, oh, I get it. I get why you would be super pissed off. That's another like reason I think people voted for Trump, just like a giant middle finger. Like they didn't even care. It's like, who do you hate the most? Him? Okay, then I'm voting for him. Because like if you think about someone who's making 60 grand a year, try paying for all that stuff.
You can't.
You can't.
Like we needed, I had just started making pretty good money, and my wife's a lawyer, and like we could barely afford our lives there.
It's crazy. In Chicago, I would say you need like 100 grand a year as a single, dude
to own. Like if you want, I mean,
Oh,
even if you
no.
rent, because rent's out of control
No.
too.
I was saying just to live, like just to like clearly you could survive on whatever, mac and cheese and a really tiny apartment on way less. But like if you want to live in a decent area of the city, with a condo with like maybe 2 bedrooms, and go out, like be able to go out on the weekends, which is the whole point living in the city as a single person, right? You probably need like $90,000-$100,000 a year job.
Yeah, like
And then to save for the future a little bit.
yeah, like when I first moved back from the States to Toronto, I think I was making 42,000 Canadian a year. And like if people ever watch the Dogger Pass podcast on the Mayo Media Network, Cody and I went to school together, broadcasting school, and then he started working at Fight Network. I left, but to go to the States, but the company that owned Fight Network bought the company I was working for in the States to launch the Fantasy Sports Network. So I just moved back to Toronto with everyone that I already knew. It really worked out weirdly that way. So Cody and I just moved in together downtown. Like we got a good price. I think we paid like $1,900 a month for rent split between the two of us. And like I said, I was making 42,000 a year. I think he was making right around there. And like, we had money to pay rent. We had money to pay our bills and like go to dive bars once a week or like have people over at our place and drink from like cheap wine that we'd buy at the wine rack down the road. But it was not an extravagant lifestyle. And we were working like 80 hours a week. So that probably helped us not spend money.
I got the salary information from the people who rented my place in the city before I sold it. I like rented it out for a few years. And like one woman she worked at Deloitte, like a big company. I think she was making like 120, 140, something like that, by herself with a kid. And then I had 2 dudes, and I think they were making like 70, 80 each. And they shared the place. So like, I don't know, like if that gives you an idea, like it's not cheap. It's ridiculous. And that was all before the inflation spike.
So
like,
how much were you charging a month per rent back then? And what year?
2,600.
And that was in like 2019, 2018?
But it was probably around then. Yeah. 2000. Yeah.
So what
2017 maybe.
Yeah. So let's say 8 years later, what do you think that place is renting for right now? Like
I don't know.
$4,000?
I haven't even looked, but the rent's gone through the roof. So yeah, about 3,200. 3,400.
Well, what I've found is like vacancy rates are very low because fewer people can afford places, or people who own places now own multiple places and rent them out because everyone just kind of, the old kind of adage, like, I mean, a lot of people put their money in Bitcoin or whatever it is, but like my grandfather will tell you, there's no investment's or real estate's a great investment. So people are like, I got this money, I'll buy some real estate. And just people did that, and now there's not as many places. Well, there's more places to rent, but there are fewer places to own. So it pushed up the market in terms of what's available to buy. So everything costs more. More people need to rent. It pushes up rent. But I know from my experience in trying to rent places before I bought that it's not that it only impacts the cheapest places, is that the cheapest places get driven up the most and become like such bad value deals, but people have to take them because they're still the cheapest. So before, if you could rent a place for like $750 and it was like an absolute piece of shit with bed bugs, that place is probably like $1,700 now, where the place that was $2,500 might be $3,000 now, $3,200, but it didn't see as big of like a percentage jump as the shitty place did.
Okay. I could see that. I do think though, even like that range went up. I haven't been keeping up on it. But I think that 2,500, 3,000 range did go up about like $500 the last time I looked. Who knows? I wonder if inflation really impacted that as well. But boy, I mean, I don't know how it is for you guys, but like everything is like $2-3 more, like stuff that was $10 is now 12. And, you occasionally some of it's really crazy, like double the price. But like, I notice it where like I was the kind of guy who would never look at a price, irresponsible as that is. I would just be like, I want this. I'm gonna get it. If it was ridiculous, I wouldn't do it just out of pure principle. But like now I'm like, these chips are $7. chips and salsa or whatever, like not at the restaurant, like at Jewel, grocery store around here. It's like I'm not paying $7 for chips. Like, just give me like I'll go make them myself at this point. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, I only buy them if they're on sale now, which I would never have done 3 years ago.
Yeah, and to think about how much cheaper everything is in America anyway versus the rest of the world. Imagine what we're doing.
I mean, I think it should be cheaper, um, even than it is. I mean, like, this inflation has been going
No,
on.
I'm saying, think about how inflation has impacted you guys and everything that basically stuff in America, like versus Canada, at least just living between places, take the exchange out of it in terms of the dollar, just like your 1v1, how much this costs in America versus how much this costs in Canada. Like, it's not quite double in Canada for a lot of things, but it's way more expensive to begin with. And then, like, we've gone through the same inflationary period as you guys.
Why is it more? So you're saying like Doritos or Coke or something, that's double in Canada?
It might not be like a can
or
of
whatever.
Coke. I mean, it might be double. It's at least 50% more. Just the purchasing power of the United States. Like, Canada has to import everything. The train, like, Canada's bigger than the U.S., so getting the supplies to every single place just is a lot more expensive. The infrastructure isn't as vast. Like, 9 out of 10 Canadians live within 100 miles of the U.S. border. Like, no one lives in most parts of the country, but east to west, there's a lot less in between. So like to put something on like the railroads kind of thing, like it takes forever to get somewhere or just even to drive it. And like, you got to think like where the main shipping ports are. Like, we're a main shipping port in Halifax. We're the closest one to Europe. So stuff coming through, like some European stuff can be like a little bit cheaper here from time to time, but they usually just bypass us anyway and go to Boston or go to New York or go to Baltimore, wherever it might be. But it's
Don't
just
you guys
harder
make your own stuff?
What's that?
Don't you make your own stuff?
Not really, no. Like,
Oh,
there
man.
are some things that we make, but a lot of the time, just we relied on the infrastructure of like factories in the United States. And once factories in the United States started like moving overseas, it became even more expensive for us to import stuff.
Huh. Yeah, that's crazy. Because I thought there'd be like, Canada's version of Coke, and like that shouldn't be more expensive.
We just have Coke. And like regulations on everything in Canada is much more like the European Union than it would be like for the United States. So
How
like,
could you not make your own stuff though, like that? If you get it,
like there's
it's
like
double.
for example, like there's GM plants here, like cars are made here.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a Coke processing plant somewhere, but I mean, if you had like the only Coke place in America isn't in Atlanta, I'm guessing. I'm sure they're all over the country.
you know what? I don't know.
Like, I would guess if there's any in Canada, there might be 2.
But I meant from like an entrepreneurial perspective, just
I would have to look at the list of billionaires. Like, you can do that, but the market in Canada is just not big enough. There's 38 million people versus
really
340 million people. Like, that's just that having a market that's 10. There's a reason that when I came out of broadcasting school, they told us like, here's the path that you need to take to become like a star in like, not a star in Canada, like to host Sports Center in Canada, which is like the highest job in sports. Maybe not so much now, but at the time, like that you could have, like if you hosted Sports Center, like you were it. You could be on Hockey Night in Canada, being one of the goobers wearing a suit, standing by the glass, like doing the pregame show. But I cared about gambling and I cared about fantasy sports, and I looked and I thought about the markets. Like hockey's big here, but like I don't really like hockey. I like football. And if I just gear a show towards what Americans like, inherently my audience is going to be way bigger to begin with. If they can accept the fact that I'm Canadian, I could really win big in this. And like my audience is just way bigger than everyone I went to school with, because they're all doing hockey shows or CFL shows. Like, there's only so many people who watch these things.
That makes sense. I thought there was more than 38 million people in Canada.
Now,
So that does make a lot more sense.
And fuck, I think 1/3 of them are Toronto and below in Ontario.
That's some pretty good star power for just 38 million.
Well, I mean, we have the little brother syndrome, so we have a lot of funny people.
Yeah, definitely, right?
And being like, we're still like, Canada's the most like the US, just in general. I mean, that's one of the parts that people hate about the US here, is that it's a lot like us, and we don't like to accept the fact that we're so much like it. But there still is way more of a British influence, especially on humor, on writing, in sensibility in a lot of ways, just culturally, than there is in America. And I'd say that would be the big difference.
Yeah, like Mike Myers kind of sense of humor, right? Is that what we're?
Yeah, but even like, just, I mean, there's a bit of absurdity to it, but just there's a lot of just sarcasm, sardonic nature, just inherently in Canadians. Self-deprecating humor, where I find that self-deprecating humor, well, obviously existing a lot in the States, it's not just like across the board, everyone kind of has it, where they kind of do here.
I mean, Martin Short, Michael J. Fox, Jim Carrey, of course, yeah. Would you say those guys are self-deprecating?
I mean, I've met Martin Short a few times. I'd say
Oh, yeah?
he most definitely is.
He's hilarious. I love Martin Short.
Jim Carrey's just kind of off the wall.
Yeah, something happened to him. And he's pretty damn strange.
I would think that any celebrity, like once you get so big that you can either, I mean, you probably end up super strange anyway, just on different ways. But like, I could see how that could break you, and just like, you're just not the same ever again.
I just heard some comedian talk about they got like they got like their one chance to meet Jim Carrey, and he was their idol, and it was the period when he was doing Man on the Moon, and he was in character as
Andy Kaufman,
and he had to call him Andy and stuff, and he's like, it would totally ruin this one moment he had to meet his hero Jim Carrey, and he had to call him Andy.
I'm just trying to think. Like, it's funny because the places that I moved to in the States, because I quit smoking about like 7 months ago, but like cigarettes cost so much money here. It's outrageous. Like, I was paying like $22 a pack, when I was quit, for 25. And, you know, sometimes when I would go to the States, you know, I'd go to Texas to go see my brother before he ended up moving to California. Like, you know, at the time, it was like, buy a pack of cigarettes for like $3, or like buy one, get one free, and get this t-shirt with it too. It's like, this sounds great. But when I moved to Jersey, it's like, oh yeah, like, no, cigarettes are like $15 a pack. It seems like and now he lives in Huntington Beach, but California prices are like basically the same. So I would equate Canada and the way that we pay for stuff with all the taxation that we have on things equivalent to what you would probably pay in California or New York State kind of thing for goods. Like, the tax on everything is so much higher, except for in Alberta, where there is no provincial tax.
That's what I was thinking, was like maybe there's like a tariff too or something on imports that they get some money off of.
They might, like, I don't know anything about that. That's
above
my pay grade.
What do you think of this concept? My dad was telling me when he was a kid, he was a kid in the 50s. So when he was a kid, he said everyone, and he grew up in a town called Joliet. I'm not sure if you probably know Joliet. It's like the Blues Brothers town, and he said everyone made like all the dads made about the same amount of money. Now, this is his recollection as a child. I didn't Google this and prove it, but he said like the managers, like the guys who were the managers on the, you know, in the neighborhood or whatever, they made like an extra $50 a week or $100 a month or something, but it was like about the same. And as that gap grew, right, for like everyday people, I think it's made like a competency crisis. That's a real thing too, like that people talk about, but like in this specific sense, I'm talking about it, where why would smart person X work at the government when they could go work at Wall Street or entertainment industry or whatever, or gamble now, you know, or something. And you know, basically any corporate job, good corporate job. Why would they not work why would they work the government over these jobs? Because the discrepancy is so huge in pay. And so like as that has shifted, you get less and less qualified people. And you know, overachievers and things like that working these positions. And I want, because like you were just saying about like the tax rate is so high. It's like from even from a progressive standpoint, like you have to go like, yeah, but you have to spend it on something that's worthwhile to me, right? Like I can't imagine there's a lot of lefties these days screaming at their top of their lungs like, you can't do anything right. And I'm paying through the roof. And I think that income gap that's shifted since the 50s, in a small way at least, has been a part of it.
Like in terms of getting attractive people, I mean, not only attractive people, but like smart people and actual critical thinkers who could solve problems into government versus into the rest of the world is what you're saying. Like there's that.
Yeah.
Gap?
If you could work for, at the state agency X and still have, the 4-bedroom home and raise your kids that can go to college like you could in the 50s, you go, I would much rather work there and, make an impact on my community, but I can't have that now. So I have to go work for the blood-sucking Apple Corporation in the marketing department because I can make $170K a year.
Yeah, I mean, I can most definitely see that. It feels like we lost the best and brightest from both the armed forces and government, and we ended up in government with just the tryhards who maybe aren't all that smart.
There was a study I read. It was done by the Congressional Budget Office, I think. So it was like, an official study when I was working at the political consulting company about what was the professions of Congress as a whole every year since like the 1900s.
I would guess they're professional politicians now.
But when did that happen?
After people returned from World War II and those people aged out?
No, it happened during the Reagan administration.
But wouldn't that track, though? Like, you could have fought in World War II and can't come back when you were, like, 21 or 25 or whatever it is. And you could have become a politician until the 80s, and then, like, you were just then too old to continue to be a politician. But then there was no, like, just, like, that was a very logical step. You'd return from war, you'd either continue to serve in the military and then transition to a desk job or into politics or use... like, there was real cachet in being a veteran, or some of the relationships that you would have made during that time that you could have went into business, but you'd always have that armed service background for when you ran. Like, that was so respected that would get you votes. Like, people were actively looking for former military members to run.
Why would those things change?
Because everyone had to go. Like in World War II, like you went and you fought. It's not like there was a draft for Vietnam, but it's not like everyone went.
No. Sure. But like, why? So, every decade up until the 80s, and it was a transition period in the 80s. The highest, the most often profession was farmer.
Yeah.
Until like the 50s or 60s or something like that. And then it was like doctors, lawyers, professionals up until like 1985 or something. And then it slowly trickled up to career politician. And now it's all career politicians.
I think it's just because people don't want to, like, as we kind of referred to, like, who the fuck would want to be president? Like, you have to be a certain way. And if you know that from the hop, basically the entire blueprint would be keep yourself squeaky clean, try to come from money to begin with. That's always going to help out. You see very few, like, bootstrap people get into politics at this point and get to the very highest levels. Obviously it happens, but coming from wealth or coming from a connected family is going to help you out in the first place to get through a lot of the stuff that you kind of spelled out at the beginning. Like you said, if I wanted to run for state senator or something like that, I wouldn't know anything about these forms. Like, just having that institutional knowledge is a huge advantage when trying to get into something, and then having access to the fundraising to begin with is also just a huge advantage that you would have over a regular person. But knowing that this is the path that you need to take, you do well in school, you get your scholarship, you try to go to whatever good state school, or if you can get into a school better than that, by all means do it. Do an undergraduate in political science or something that you can point back to that would give you quote unquote foreign policy experience in the future. And then you go to an Ivy League law school And then you don't actually ever practice law. You like article for a year, then you go into politics and work in a senator's office or a congressman's office, because that's just how the blueprint goes. And I think enough people picked up on it. And a lot of the people that we previously mentioned, like, the same reverence for the armed forces doesn't exist as much now as it did in 1961 kind of thing.
I think it did in the 80s though.
It did, but all of those people, but did people treat veterans of the Vietnam War with the same reverence as they did with people of World War II?
I think they treated John McCain with that reverence, if not more.
John McCain was also a POW for 7 years. He was like highly publicized Vietnam vet.
Sure, but clearly they treated him with plenty reverence. Yeah, and also to a lot of that like the Vietnam, soldiers coming home and getting spit on and stuff like that was propaganda. Never happened. It was just in a movie. So like I think there's a lot of people thinking that there was way more hatred.
No, but it's not like Vietnam was
than there actually was.
But there was a shift of.
I would also argue. I think that like this how you're describing it happening could have happened at any point.
Sure, but it just feels like that's the 60s. But that feels like that's the natural age out of all of the last World War II veterans who would still be in politics. But
aging out always happens. It could have happened from the 20s to the 60s, but why didn't it?
Because there was another war in between.
I think you could look. I think you're kind of just describing what happened.
Sure, I am giving. Yeah,
you're just describing what, but that doesn't mean like that's why it happened, and it doesn't mean it couldn't have happened at any point in time.
That's true, but it's a little bit like baseball stats, where war isn't a predictive stat. It's just sort of a storytelling stat of what it did. If you want the predictive, we don't have an XFIP of.
That's what I'm saying. You're just describing what's happened here. I don't think that was the root cause.
What do you think was the cause then?
Well, I think one part was that discrepancy that I talked about, that why would competent people work for, $90,000 a year or less, depending on what spot we're talking about here, is a big part of it. And it became like a machine in its own system. Back in the day, like it would be gross to be considered a career politician.
It still should be today.
It still should be, but people just accept it. Like, no, that's the career politician that I vote for every single fucking time.
We've had a few of those right now. It's funny because like people, Trudeau is at, I think, like year 8, year 9, year 10. Like this happens like every cycle in Canadian politics. Like you just get sick of whoever the prime minister is and you just hate everything about them and they get voted out. And then it's either it happens for the Liberals, like they've been in power for like 8 years. Before that, I think the Conservatives were in power in 10 years. And by the time Harper's cycling, I think he won 4 elections or something like that. By the time the last one came around, people were like, I'm fucking sick of this guy. Like, he needs to go. He is the worst person I've ever seen in my life. Now people are like, oh yeah, Stephen Harper, like whatever. Same thing's going to happen to Trudeau in like 10 years. It's like, oh yeah, I guess he wasn't that bad because this new guy we have is even worse. Like that's just.
Is it even that long? I hear he might not make it that long.
Trudeau?
Yeah.
Well, he's gone. He's running in the next election, so he'll lose. So whenever that is, whenever they call Canadian politics works a lot. It works a lot like UK politics, where an election needs to be called because there's they have to dissolve parliament, but he still has one of the other minority parties in his back pocket, so they can still form a majority over the Conservatives. So unless that third party can vote with the Conservatives to call an election's not going to happen until it gets to the requirement. I think 6 years is the actual term that you could have, but sometimes there's an election every 2 years, and it costs a lot of money to run an election. Although our elections are only 6 weeks long.
So you're predicting Trump wins, Trudeau loses. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm on board there. Obviously, we're talking in probabilities here.
Yeah, I'm more confident that Trudeau loses than Trump wins.
Okay. Interesting.
Just because.
What are the odds? Can you bet on that?
You can on Bodog, I think, or on Bovada. I don't know if the odds are up on it right now. I could last time around, and I won a bunch of money betting on Trudeau. The interesting thing with Trudeau, though, is there is it's now trickled over into the mainstream that everyone just is sick of him and wants him gone. But he's actively good on the campaign trail. Like he got caught doing blackface last time that came out, and he won
Multiple
votes
times.
because of that, because of how well he was able to, like, he seems like genuinely like a really nice guy. Like he was a former, like his dad was prime minister. So he grew up like just like kind of weird, but he was like a drama teacher, a snowboard instructor. Like this is what he was doing just like after college before he got into politics. Like he seems like a nice guy. Like he can empathize. Women have historically done really well with him. Women like Trudeau, and he's like handsome, or he was, so that helps. He just got divorced too. Like shit's crazy.
I love the Fidel Castro rumor. I love
It's
it.
not true.
Oh, I still love it though. I love a good Fidel Castro Trudeau meme.
Well, I was just talking to a few, because I have a friend who's Cuban, or his family is Cuban. He lives in like the DC area. And I was very curious about, like, can Americans go to Cuba now?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
Because I've been to Cuba like 3 or 4 times. Because, I mean, the dirty little secret was that everyone from around the world, if they wanted to go to the Caribbean a lot of the times, would just go to Cuba because there was no Americans there. Like you just see Germans and Dutch people, like a lot of, because I just got back from Aruba and I met a lot of Dutch people who were in Aruba, it being a Dutch colony. And they were like, yeah, we started to come to Aruba more often because there's direct flights, but also because like Americans are in Cuba now. And now like Aruba's just nicer than Cuba, because Cuba's still, like, that's the one thing that sticks out in my mind from Cuba. Like, it was always cheaper to go there for one thing, but like the resorts, like the food would be really bad. It would be super run down, but like the guy giving you towels at the resort might be a doctor at the same time too. Like just because it was more profitable at that time in like the late 90s, early 2000s to be a doctor in Cuba, you'd make more money at a resort getting tips than actually being a doctor.
Right. Yes, I heard that. Did you see all the old school cars?
So I went to Havana for 2 days once. I had a friend who worked for the airline. We flew from Toronto directly to Havana and just spent 2 nights like in the city. It was like being in 1964, or how I imagine it was.
That's kind of cool.
It was a time warp.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
It was, but like, I don't know. It's funny how safe it was there too.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm sure it wasn't for all Cuban citizens, but one thing I've noticed really about like traveling as a white dude around like Central American places that you hear like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, it's dangerous there, that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure that there is a mandate from these governments that they have with criminals, cartels, gangs, whatever it might be. It's like, don't fuck with the tourists, because then we're all shit out of luck.
I just watched a video, strangely enough, about a guy who goes around America and shows, small towns and what they look like when the manufacturing companies leave and what they look like now. And he went to Cancun, the island right off of Cancun. What is it called? It's like the Virgin. I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, while he was filming, they had multiple military members with machine guns on the island. It was like noticeable. And then he mentioned to his wife they had some drug cartel problem recently or something.
I remember I went to Playa del Carmen, which is like 40 minutes south of Cancun, and there was like a weird, they called it like a terrorist attack, but like someone blew up a ferry port or something on one of these islands, actually. So it's probably the same thing.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's I don't remember that happening.
That would have been in 2017.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would recommend Aruba for anyone who has the capability of going there. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And very westernized. Like if you're uncomfortable with going places, and it was funny, like there's a direct flight from Jersey, from Newark, JFK, and Logan every single day. There might be even 2. Like these United and Delta flights that just go direct to Aruba, and they drop off a load of people, pick up a load of people, and they just do the same thing every single day. And there are so many people from the Northeast, at least during this time of year, that are there. Like they have a Sopranos themed restaurant in Aruba. And you can hear Jersey people from a mile away. Like you can actively hear Jersey people everywhere.
I wanted to ask you before we were DMing me. Did you like Gord Downey?
Here's the thing. Yes, but the Tragically Hip in general is treated so much differently in Canada than Like, if you know about the Tragically Hip in America, like, it's cool. They have cool music. It is totally different up here. Like, they are
Yes.
the thing. Like, I've probably seen them 20 times in concert.
Yeah, their album was number one in Canada. Like the 12 of their albums hit number one in Canada.
Yeah. Like, there's very few things that just remain Canadian culture and stay within the borders. Because if something is good enough or gets big enough, it just, especially now with just the access of information, that stuff would get so big. But they were always just kind of a Canadian. I'm sure they were big in like upper New York State, Michigan. I could see how they could make their way down to Illinois and like maybe some of the northern part of like the Midwest and of like, you know, into Boston, something like that, of the Northeast. But generally speaking, it was very contained to like across Canada, yes, but very much just like they were an Ontario band.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was more of like people who were hip to music scene, you know, different music scene kind of thing. You know, people were sharing smaller bands. Like that's what happened with me. Is you know, that was a long time ago. You know, I burned that CD, Coke Machine Glow, and I wore it out, man. That's one of my favorite. So like the Tragically Hip, they're fine, whatever. They're not like, I'm not a huge fan, but I love that Coke Machine Glow album.
Really? Like there was
Yeah,
like national mourning when he died.
Yes, yeah, they were gonna make it like a national day. I don't think they ever did, but they were considering it.
I mean, they could change one of like the 80 weird holidays that we have into Gore Downey Day, and I'd probably be better than Family Day.
Right? Yeah, they should have.
When did you? How early in like the CD burning process did you get a CD burner? Because I made some cash burning CDs
Early.
like down like because my uncle worked in tech, so he was like he set up a CD burner and I think I was on a 64K line at the time, because I remember having that thing where if someone called you when you were on the internet, that it would be someone is calling, here's who's calling you. You could accept to get off the internet or be like, nah, I don't want to talk to that person. Just decline and stay on the internet and continue to download like songs off Napster so I could burn them onto a CD and then sell it in the 8th grade the next day for like $5 a disc.
My buddies were selling CDs on eBay back then. Yeah, that they would burn. Or what they would do is have you ever heard of a band called Local H?
No.
Okay, they were popular in Chicago for a brief time, and so he would go and record them, and then burn the CD and sell it on eBay. And the drummer from the band messaged him. This is back like before Twitter. Could you please stop illegally selling our live albums? It makes me though. I should find one of. Well, I'm sure he's probably got a charity or something and donate $15-20 for burning the poor guy's CD and not paying for it. I don't think I paid for it. I should look.
How old are you? Because I'm 38 now.
Yeah, I'm older than you. I'm 45.
So you're 45, but I feel like we're still a part of that same like weird in between. Like, you would have got the internet in what, like end of high school kind of thing? Or it would have been there earlier, but like more access to it.
My family, like my sister is an executive in Silicon Valley, and both
so
my
you got it
brothers
early.
are coders, and we've had early computers, and so yeah, I was on Prodigy, you know, back in the day, you know, looking up, getting Oakland A's sports score updates and stuff, and probably 93 on the internet, racking up my mom's, you know, internet bills, stuff like that, getting kicked out of Star Trek chat rooms.
Spending all those AOL minutes.
Yes, we would rack them up in the AOL Star Trek chat rooms. Like they had these role playing chat rooms, right? So like, you know, there's a person playing Deanna. I mean, I know you know all the names, and someone's Picard, and when we're like, no, we're gonna be Worf, and we're like 12, you know, and like Worf is played by you know 8762. Like no, we're Worf. Launch proton torpedoes, you know, just totally annoying 12-year-olds till they kick us out.
Like I remember being on like these GeoCities sites and basically doing the same thing but with wrestling.
Wrestling, okay.
Yeah, like that's what we do. Like if there was no football game that we could play at like lunchtime, we just go into the library, jump on the computers, and there'd be like 10 of us, and we'd just go do that. Or if it was raining out, like that's how we'd end up passing the time in like 7th grade, 8th grade, whatever it might be. But Do you think
Completely
it's,
inappropriate,
do you
by the
think,
way, for 12-year-olds to be doing that.
yeah, like, do you think, but because not that I love the Outliers book by Malcolm Gladwell, but I do think that there are sort of distinct things that he kind of pointed out that, again, in retrospective analysis, maybe there are other reasons for it. But like even the hockey player example from Canada, that like the vast majority, like 75%, 80% are all like born in January, February, and March, just because they were the biggest of their ages. So they were just always the best growing up. They got the best training. Therefore, that translated into better skills. If you were born at the end of the year, that would be really bad. But there was also like tech executives that they were all kind of born within a 6-year range of each other because they just happened to kind of win the being born at the right time lottery, that their life progressed in such a way where they were able to capitalize on this new technology. And if they had been born 5 years later, well, they would have missed the boat on everything. I kind of feel like we lucked out in a weird way of being in between generations, that helped us out a lot, being able to take parts of being able to still relate to people who like still can't, like my dad's like my dad's super young comparatively to how old I am. I think he's 56 or 57. Like he can't use computers, and like he's not that old, but he can't do it. And being in between, like my uncle, my brother is actually like a really good example of this. He's 47 now, and like he became like a computer programmer in 1999. He just printed for 20 years.
So your dad had you when he was 16?
16 and 15, my mom and dad.
Wow. Was that just kind of a Canada, they get married young? Or
No.
was that a high school thing?
No, that was
high school thing?
That was probably drinking in high school, and then Pat showed up.
Okay. Hey, whatever it takes, man. It's like, I mean, if you step back and just think of, the sperms throughout the Mayo history going back to 4000 BC, and the odds that you would be here, each drunken sex event that call, like you just gotta you go like makes you believe in God for a second, like, oh my God.
Well, it's funny too, just because like when you think back of like teenage pregnancy, especially like Nova Scotia is a very poor, it's one of the poorest provinces it's not like Mississippi poor in terms of America, but it's towards the bottom end of Canada. That just like to think about like the end of like a DFS tournament, like you need to get so lucky in order to actually win instead of coming in fourth kind of thing. Like you need those things to break your way. Like I've already like ran good by being in the position that I was able to be in growing up with parents that were 15 and 16. Like it's insane. Like just when you just look at the stats on people that are born into that, like it never really works out that well.
Yes, and just anecdotally, I agree with that. But like to your broader point, I'm agree, like the generation in that 6-10 year range for us, like late millennial, early Gen X, like I compare it to like my dad's age of cars. Like they know how to fix cars. Like because cars had to be fixed back then, like you had to like know how to change the oil and like put a car together and pull pull pieces out of it. I don't know how to do any of that stuff because all the cars were, becoming computerized, and my dad did it. So like, I didn't have to growing up, but I did build my own computer. Right? Like I knew how to change a hard drive and I knew how to burn CDs. I've been on the internet since its inception. So like, yeah, like it kind of like that period. But like kids these days, they just, swipe. They don't know how to do any of that stuff. You load app, swipe, that's it. They know how to like log in, like save their password, but they don't know anything like that car building stage.
I think, yeah, the actual functional tools of knowing how the things work, I guess. I mean, I've always, that's been my biggest advantage in this space, is actually understanding how it's not turn on camera, record show, let's see you next week kind of thing. Like knowing how the lighting works, knowing what different camera lenses look better in certain lighting, knowing the programs to properly edit with, knowing how to create your own graphics, knowing the marketing strategy behind a lot of this stuff to build up a show to a point where it could become somewhat valuable. I've always, and it's not so much of an advantage now because way more people actually know how to do that. But 15 years ago, it was a huge advantage.
I just makes me think of this one side tangent here that I have that they kind of thought of the generations. Have you heard of oh God, I can't remember his book, but it's the premise of strong men make good times make weak men make bad men make strong times. So like after every generation kind of has a different plot in life. Like the greatest generation, fought World War II, which led to good times for the boomers, which is leading for, bad times for millennials. And then, so like, if this cycle continues, Gen Z then should be trying to make times good again. I can't remember the name of the book. It's driving me crazy. But anyways, I think we're in like a new paradigm where Gen X and millennial and boomer don't make sense anymore. Where I think it makes way more sense to kind of partition it like post and pre-internet or somewhere around there. So like 2002 and after and 2002 and before. So like you, me, Pete, and Davis is on like the edge and everyone older. We all kind of grew up the same way. Like we have like who I Love Lucy is, right? Like
Yeah.
even if you've never seen it, you know who it is.
We had a fixed amount of television channels, but everyone had like the same television, the same 38 to 61 television channels. But really, there was like 10 that people watched. And there wasn't enough programming, so they ran shows from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. I mean, I remember watching Hogan's Heroes.
Sure, Hogan's Heroes. Like
that show was canceled 10 years before I was born.
Sure. And like the 60s talk shows, like the Beatles and Elvis would go on. Like I of course I didn't watch those, but I know what they are. I know I know all the memes, the boomer memes that they know, I don't know. I'm thinking like tons of movies, like everyone watched
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. Go down the list. Godfather. All the Al Pacino movies, just go on and on. Like, just look behind you, the Holy Grail. Like, everyone knows who Monty Python is, who's my age. Everyone, every single one. But if you ask someone after 2002, you're going to start getting a bunch of misses on a lot of these.
Now, is that because of the collective culture has changed, and then there's so much media that everything has become so niche that you don't actually have to participate in the broad culture? You can just like what you like, and that's fine because there's content driven. There's enough people like you to sustain an ecosystem. Like, just think about what we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the internet and all these partition attention. Location, different locations, different that there's no way to kind of keep that cultural hegemony the same as it was before. Like even in like high school, we went to high school the same way. Back to the Future. If you go Back to the Future, Marty went 1955. It looked just like my high school I went to in the 90s. You know what I mean? There was like no difference. And like, I mean, imagine now the schools don't advance, very much, but I imagine but there's probably a whole bunch of computers and laptops and all a bunch of different stuff. And like, we know like the numbers, kids don't go outside as much. They don't have as many friends. They don't have sex as much. They don't drink as much. Whole bunch of different things.
But I could see how, I mean, you say that the paradigm has shifted in terms of generation to generation of, trying to create that, basically humanity goes in a cycle in that way. And just
right.
The times that we live in, there are certain things that I see, like even, I don't know, my kids are super young, so they're not quite there yet. But just, even when I talk to like 20-year-olds that are trying to get jobs with me, or I go and speak to students at the old broadcasting school that I would go to, people just seem a lot more like nice and empathetic now than when I was 20. And it was just an asshole because I was drunk all the time.
That may be so. And that cyclical thing might still happen again. I mean, I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying I think it just makes a whole bunch more sense to partition the generations, pre-internet, post-internet, pre-2002, somewhere around there in post, because those people are a lot more alike and we're a lot more alike.
Yes.
Not that we're totally different, I'm not saying it's a super bad thing. It's just like, and also like the truths, like the truths of our this pre-internet, right? Like the Holocaust and World War II was really big to this group. The hippies and peace and love and rock and roll and like I don't know, there's a lot of other like the moon landing, a lot of other like truths that like just matter way more to this generation than to the other generation. And I think honestly, like on Twitter, you'll see a lot of Palestine Israel arguing that I don't think you would have saw if it was all pre 2002 generation.
Well, do you think that's because of access of information? Like, how
Partially.
does World War II play out differently if we have the same media that we have now?
I think they did. I don't think they watched Schindler's List like was required, in high school. For I bet you and everyone else.
I
And
did
like,
watch it in high school.
yeah, yeah, me too. And you know what I mean? Like it was part of like the truths of those generations, and I don't think it is of theirs.
But okay, but just think about like, I mean, we talked a little bit about Vietnam, and like you say, the propaganda aspect of it. It was a more unpopular war for Americans to go fight
Sure.
in than any war previously, and really it was the first war that was ever put on TV. People could see what was happening, and just the visceral reaction to seeing death on TV is not going to be a positive thing. You could see how that could change people and make people anti-war and not be behind that, where the only thing that you got from, I mean, it's propaganda newsreels from World War II. Here are the boys on the front and they're fighting down in the trenches. Like, it's all positive things about like, we're winning. Our side is winning, beating the Nazis. Yeah. That if you actually had the access of information in World War II where, I don't know, some soldier was taking a TikTok in 1939 or something like that, it could have been way different.
Sure, like killing a bunch of Germans, looks pretty bad. Like if you have the footage right in front of them and you see them, they're getting their arms blown off and stuff, you're going to get sympathy from that. Like, especially like the bombing of Dresden and stuff like that was probably unnecessary in hindsight, in Hiroshima, etc. So like certainly that changes things. But I just think, I'm not saying like how or why. I just think it is. I think it just definitely is this partitioned two kind of generations, even though that doesn't make sense because generations are usually the kids of the adults of the time is how you would do it. But I think that has been a major shift. And I think that's why like a lot of boomers can't understand it because they're like, no, these are the truths. And these kids are like, no, they're not. We don't know those. Like, we're going to say whatever we want. And they get like, they lose their mind.
Yeah, well, maybe this society operated more with customs and conventions, even through our lifetime, far more than just there are no customs and conventions anymore. People just do what they want.
There's also like fake truths too. And like the Vietnam one kind of is. Yes, I'll agree it was like a less popular war, but like most of the wars after World War II weren't super popular. And like one of the reasons why I would say this, because if you look at Nixon's re-election campaign in 72, he won by a landslide. People don't know this. Like he was the third biggest landslide win in American history. But people think like Nixon was a super unpopular president because of the Vietnam War, wasn't he? No.
Who his running mate was was it Spiro Agnew or Rockefeller in 72?
Spiro Agnew in 72.
In 72. Who did he beat in 72? Because Johnson beat Goldwater in 68. No, in 64.
Yes, he beat McGovern in 68, right?
Who did he beat in 72?
Why can't I not think?
It's not Mondale. It was Reagan killed.
No, Mondale was
right?
against Reagan.
Yeah.
No, McGovern was 72. Who was he in 68 then?
Well, it was going to be RFK, but he got shot.
Right. That's why I thought McGovern took over. It was, Hubert Humphrey.
Really?
Yeah, and that's when George Wallace ran as an independent.
Okay.
Yeah, Hubert Humphrey. Okay, I thought it was McGovern won. I thought McGovern took over after RFK. So there you go. But yeah, so he won. He won 43.4% of the popular vote, and Humphrey won 42.7 in 68. So it was close in 68, but then a landslide in 62. Like I said, the third biggest landslide in American history. But like we don't think that. So like some of the truths of this generation, I'm calling it, aren't even true. But we all have them.
Yeah.
I would also say religion too. Like I'm not a religious guy, but I'm culturally Christian. You know what I mean? Like I say, oh God, Jesus, and like the people, and just because I think the Midwest culture was like a Christian, American in general was a Christian culture.
Well, that's one thing from the outside looking in that I do notice about America far more than anywhere else that I've been is just how much religion plays a part in the country versus anywhere else. And not to say that people are not religious in Canada, but like it doesn't touch our politics whatsoever. Like I have no idea outside of Jagmeet Singh, who I mean, I think he's a Sikh, like culturally, but outside of that, like I couldn't tell you what religion any politician is. Like it just never comes up.
Right. Well, he's pretty easy. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's Sikh. Man, it certainly is. It certainly plays it. But just like to the generational divide, I don't think young people have that thing I'm talking about where you're like kind of just raised. How about do you know what I'm saying? Like leaving aside politics, like did you feel like you were raised like kind of like a Christian culture
Yeah.
and you have like
I grew up Catholic. I got confirmed. I had to go to church every single week. And like I look around the people that I went to Sunday school with that I still know today. Let's call it 12 of us, male and female. Like we're all in our late 30s now. 0% go to church or actively participate.
right. And so like then this new generation grows up in that new world where I still think it's still probably a little bit of Christian influence, but not nearly as much. And so like when everyone kind of has the same moral set, we all have that we're raised kind of the same way. We all had another example is the big moments typically in a young adult's life. 16, 18, 21. Kids don't even get their license. I don't know what they are in Canada. It's probably similar. Kids don't even go to like get their license when they turn 16 right away anymore. Stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I think that depends on where you live, though, because like where we are, everyone goes and gets their license. I mean, I can't speak to 16-year-olds now, but when I was 15, you could get into a program to make sure like the day you turned 16, you got your license. And like everyone I knew did that because you could only get around by car. There was no Uber.
Yeah, but I could be wrong, but I think the numbers are less. Like they aren't getting them as quickly.
Now, is that because of things like Uber?
I guess supposedly, I guess that could be true. Yeah.
Like transit around here sucks, but it's markedly better than it was 25 years ago.
I think it's because they don't go out as much and it doesn't matter and they spend most of their time online.
I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. I think that's
Right.
that's a very like logically that's a good leap to I think make, but I actually have no idea if that's true.
They drink less. That's like a known.
But doesn't like everyone kind of drink less now?
I don't know. I do.
Yeah, so do I. Like I drink way less than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah, but we're also older.
True, but like when I was growing up, like the 45-year-olds, and were just basically raging alcoholics.
Yeah, that's true.
And like, I don't really know anyone who's like that. Like I know people who enjoy a
but
brew or
I
two.
I would say in this generation I'm talking about pre-2002, every single one of them during college, everyone binge drank those college years. Like that was just always in the 60s, 18 to 22, they were binge drinking. In the 70s, they were binge drinking. 80s, binge drinking. 90s, binge drinking. Probably in the 2000s.
I started college in 2004, and that's what I did for 6 years.
And I think that age group has dropped.
I can see that, but maybe that's just educational at the same time too. That like, hey, this is really bad for you.
And again, like we're talking like, it's completely anecdotally, but like, grains of sand making a heap kind of, there's just a different cultural difference between at some dividing line. I'm calling it 2002, but somewhere around there where the whole culture from these two cohorts is just different. And like, I don't think the older generation can see it at all. And they're just like confused
I mean, are
and
we
like,
falling into that bucket right now, having this conversation? Or like we confused by it? Or are you talking about people who are like double our age?
I'm saying more people who are double our age, like, and obviously there's a lot of nuance behind, every interaction. Like, we're talking about like the war in the Middle East or whatever. And there's people can have all sorts of different reasonings for arguing over it. But like, I can't remember what started this generational conversation, but like, it's just something I've been thinking about for like a year or two is it's really not that cycle of, you know, the cycle of the last, 2000 years or so. That's different between Gen X and millennial. It's really the internet and just the age of this technology and how much it's changed the behavior of young people. That's my thesis. I don't know. Um, I don't know if I can ever get the data to back it up, but I think that there's definitely something there. Like, because come on, Pat, you have to talk to like some 22-year-old, and you're like, you make some reference you thought for sure they would know, and they have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I try. Like, I kind of go into it knowing that they don't know, so I don't make the reference. My buddy Cust is like the biggest victim of this because he's basically an old man anyway, despite only being 35, and thinks that everyone. He always gives people the benefit of the doubt for everything. So he thinks that if he knows a reference, that inherently every other single person in the world. Like we were talking about Homestar Runner the other day. And he was like, he was telling it about something like doing a Homestar impression. I was like, man, like this guy's not going to know what the fuck you're talking about, man.
Right.
This was an internet cartoon that came out 20 years ago or 25 years ago.
I don't even know.
Like it can't exist. The website can't exist on the internet anymore because it was built on Flash. Like this was a niche thing. It wasn't widely known. It was known. And that was sort of the first thing of maybe what we're talking about right now. So that's why I said like being in between generations is kind of nice that we had this thing that like, I don't know how, like it's popular enough that I went to a video rental store in the early 2000s. They had a video that you could rent, like a cassette for your VCR that had like some of the skits on it, like some of the short cartoons. So it was popular enough to make it into a video store. But everything kind of went to video in that day anyway. But it was so niche at the time that for my age group, maybe it was only people who were between 16 and 19 at that time that would even have the possibility of knowing what that was. And then that only became more micro as the years went along with everything. That's why the Taylor Swift thing is so polarizing and people have opinions on it because everyone actually does know who she is.
Right. Definitely. I mean, the reference you made that's crazy to think that people would know that. I'm talking like the Beatles.
Yeah, but I mean, that's an old band. Like, I get that. I get why they're popular, why they're relevant, but like rock and roll isn't relevant anymore.
But if you talk to like anyone in 2002, every single person knew who the Beatles were.
I think that they're probably still more well known than maybe. Yes, there are more people who don't know who they are, but that also like I think they're a bad example because they're still sort of like the most famous thing from that period. I would say like imagine if you ask someone now who's 19 years old who Led Zeppelin is.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Just because the Beatles still carry cultural currency where Led Zeppelin really doesn't.
And clearly there's young people who know who the Beatles are, like obviously, right? Like I guarantee Taylor Swift has probably talked about how she loves the Beatles probably somewhere. And they're like, oh, let me look this up now. But I'm saying like it's dramatically like these truths, if you will, like the Beatles, and these cultural Frank Sinatra, things like that everyone knew. Bob Hope, like me and you should know who Bob Hope is if we're going back that long. Right. But you know exactly who Bob Hope is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I still remember the Bob Hope Classic, the golf tournament. He used to have 5 rounds.
Exactly. So, you know what I'm saying? Why would we know who they are? Right. He was doing World War II specials, overseas for the troops. That's how old he was. But we know who he is. Like, I mean, you could go even further back. You know who Charlie Chaplin is.
Yeah.
Right. But these kids don't. But everyone before 2002 did.
I wonder if that will be if that is the line of demarcation, that I wonder if that from that generation on, like the internet era, as you kind of called it, will just have their own things that we just don't know about.
Sure. Yeah.
But all of them will collectively know it.
Maybe it'll be better. I doubt it, but but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I'm using like these huge, big examples of things we all know for sure. There's probably a whole bunch of other ones that you and I don't even think about and take for granted, that it doesn't even cross their mind. Not even culture, just like the way to behave.
Yeah. Again, there can't be a monoculture anymore because there's so much going on and we get access to so much stuff. It's like news sources. Like, it's not shocking that no one trusts news sources anymore when you have people on TikTok who people are going to believe who are like standing in Gaza. Like, why would I believe CNN or Fox News and their like correspondent who's standing like 8 miles away with stuff going on in the background, or this person who's being bombed as it's happening? Like, if that seems to be happening, maybe I should believe them and what they're saying.
Very well. And this kind of parasocial relationship we develop with content creators. And like because through evolution, like we can't even help it. And I'm sure some of your fans have it with you, that you don't know them, but they know you, And so like it's like some random dude who appears on CNN. I have no idea who that is and don't care, but someone who I consume 2 hours of their content a week for the last 5 years, I'm going to take his opinion seriously, or hers, or whatever. And like, even if they're not an expert on it, I'll be like, what do you think? Okay, well, let me like look into that. If this person I respect and I knows like a good person because I've consumed so much of their content thinks this, maybe there's something to look into. Never was happening before. I'm just saying, let's just recognize it. And then, like what else could happen from this?
Yeah, I mean, that you just basically explained like the entire Joe Rogan effect.
Sure.
I think the misconception about Rogan, like from people who don't like him, are like, well, this guy's just an idiot and he doesn't know anything. Like, if you like listen to his show, like, yeah, that's kind of like his standpoint, and he brings on people to try to educate him. And like, not to say it's like he's the most trusted news source going, but I get why people listen to him and the ideas that he has. Because but that's a good cultural divide too. Like, there are just a bunch of people who listen to Joe Rogan, and then a bunch of people who have opinions about him but have never listened to it.
For certain,
well, I would throw it as my example.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, we did like 2 hours, man. This was fun.
Oh yeah,
great. I love this.
We went long here.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to Tyreek Hill breaking the leg of a plus size model who we invited to his house for some reason.
You broke the seal too early. You went, hey, you worked in politics, didn't you? And then from there, it's all over.
Well, I've always been interested in that because I've never really heard you speak about it at length. Just I always had questions.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm just saying, like, we got to start with the Tyreek, and then we'll work into the crazy stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can save that for Cuss. We can do Tyreek. He can hate the Dolphins more, and then he can take his victory lap about Wendy's surge pricing because they're getting rid of that now. Like that idea, although I thought it was hilarious, was people were very upset.
You're talking about surge pricing on Ubers?
On Wendy's, they were going to institute like an Uber surge. Like how Uber has surge pricing, that if there was a lot of lineups and busy periods at Wendy's, they were going to start charging more. They were going to have like an adjusted model for the price of the food.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's crazy. I just went there the other day, and they actually have some semi-healthy stuff there.
Yeah, but here's the thing. And because Cuss makes this point to me all the time, that he's like, yeah, well, you can get really healthy things at McDonald's. Like, yeah, but no one does. You're not going. If you were gonna get something healthy, you wouldn't go to fucking Wendy's.
They have salads. Like if I went there, I got a salad
with something else.
And well, they had a panko crusted fish sandwich. So, but it's panko crusted fish. I mean, it's not that bad. But yeah, these places, you're right. You're not going for your healthiest meal.
Did you do any of the? I know you have the product for best ball football. Does it work for best ball golf?
It does, yeah.
All right, and that's at bric75.com.
Yep.
Cool. I might. Did you do any of the major drafts last year on Underdog?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have to get your expertise on that because I'm digging in deep here.
Well, we need numbers on it because we were getting them from Fantasy Golf Bag, but he retired that site. So
Drew went to Run Pure, didn't he?
Yeah, but he closed down Fantasy Golf Bag part. So
what do we need the number? What do we need the numbers for? Like, what numbers do you need?
Just an overlay for free for people, like because you can overlay your own numbers, on Underdog, with the tool. But you can also last year you could also use Drew's.
Okay, is this something that I can Can I make power rankings within Fantasy?
Yeah, like
National?
if you had power rankings or something like that.
Yeah, can I figure out a way to customize power rankings for Fantasy National, export to a CVS, and upload into this?
You can definitely do that, and if you wanted to, I could put it on there as a default for anyone to use, the Pat Mayo numbers. If you want,
maybe we'll talk. Maybe I'm still getting the. That I'm not that great with tech, so I gotta. Sometimes I talk to Moose who builds stuff for Fantasy National. He's like, "That's impossible. What you just asked for." It's like, "Oh yeah, it was just an idea, throwing it out here."
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right. No promises needed. If you want, we can do it.
Lowell's is live. What, 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. on Thursdays?
It is 12:30 Real America time, 1:30 Eastern. So
2:30 my
live
time
today. Yeah. So
I always listen to it in the podcast version. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh, wow. You're one of the audio listeners by service.
Well, it's funny because so many people in our space now, it's the video views, TikTok views, Twitter views, Instagram reels, whatever it is. My biggest audience by far is my audio podcast feed. It's not even close. It's 5x.
We must not be promoting ours right, because we get 5 to 1 video over the audio.
And I get 5 up to 20 to 1 on the audio feed versus the video feed.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. We'll gotta do something else.
I think it's just harder. I think because I got in so early, I've had this podcast feed since 2010, that there were just so few options comparatively to now, that just people have had me on their Apple podcast feed for 13 years or something like that.
And so when they see the headline that they like, they click it.
Yeah, and even because I have basically the same, outside of a few shows every week, I basically have the same guests throughout the year. It changes during football into golf, but it's hey, Mondays with Feinberg during golf season. It's been that way for 10 years. Thursday nights with me, Jeff, and Wednesday nights with me, Jeff, and Tim. That's just always been a thing. Me and Jake on Tuesdays. It's been that way for 11 years now. That some people who want to hear Jake talk, they'll tune in on Tuesdays. They don't give a shit about the gambling part, but other people come in for the gambling part, so they stay subbed. Don't listen to the Tuesday one, but listen to the Wednesday one, kind of thing. But I always wanted to make Fridays kind of what we're doing right now. That was always kind of what I envisioned for this show. But stuff like this just doesn't rate all that well.
Right.
And it works, but it works better as an audio podcast, I think, because I just always try to base it on my consumption habits, that I always like a podcast like this to have on a Friday, because I might listen to half an hour on Friday, but I got to bring the kids they play something called sport ball on Saturdays, where I go drop them off. So I got an hour to kill waiting for them on Saturdays. I would like to have a podcast I could listen to on Saturday. And that's what I would want for this. But I think that people just don't listen to podcasts the way that I do.
That's how I listen to it. It's an hour to the city, depending on traffic. And so that's 2 hours back and forth. So podcasts like this, where there's two guys bullshitting, is absolutely perfect for me for that trip. But if I'm watching YouTube, I might not be able to do 2 hours sitting there watching. I can't. It depends. If it's really, I'm really interested in, it's a good conversation, I could still do it. But this is my favorite type of podcast to do, where we're just completely, two guys just talking. I think this is what the format was originally intended for, all those years ago. And I like all the innovations and stuff too. But this is usually my favorite type, just dudes being real,
Yeah, and that is, that's still my favorite things to listen to. But if you want people to find it, you need to be like, because I remember doing like multi-sports throughout the course of some podcasts. Like, hey, we're going to do like 25 minutes, almost like you see some of like the debate shows on Fox or ESPN, whatever it might be. You're like, oh yeah, we're going to do the first like A block and B block or NFL. Then we'll talk about NBA and then we'll talk about baseball a little bit after that. I remember trying out those shows and like no one would click on the video. No one would listen to the podcast. But if I split them up into 3 videos and 3 podcasts, they would do 10x the downloads and views.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for like people just starting because it's rough out there.
It can be, but you would also have the like, I don't do TikTok and I know that I should. That if I was starting out, like that's the first place I would start.
Yeah. I still don't even have a TikTok account.
I don't have, I mean, I have one for Mayo Media, but like I always forget, like I only have so much. Like, I guess if you could do it all from like one hub, like TweetDeck used to be awesome for that. Like push it out to here, push it out to there. Now TweetDeck sucks. So is great for Twitter, but that's really about it. But like reels, like 10-second clips. It's funny. I'm rewatching 30 Rock. And in the second season, when Will Arnett shows up and he pitches his idea, and it's like supposed to be the most ludicrous thing in the world. He's like 10-second snuff films featuring celebrities sent directly to your mobile phone. Was supposed to be like the biggest gag line in the world. Now, snuff films probably not happening, but like 10-second videos on your phone is just what people watch now.
I had the same thing with like the YouTube. The original YouTube pitch must have been like, do you remember public access TV? For everyone. And it's like, oh, okay, get out of my office. Get out of my office. Could you imagine pitching YouTube to someone in 1999 or whatever? Like public access TV, there's another thing kids don't know, was a giant, like where the weirdest of the weirdos had their own local TV shows, you know, in regional areas. And it was a joke, you know, essentially. And so you try to pitch YouTube like that, good luck.
If you remade Wayne's World, it would have to be with like YouTube, right?
If you remade it, oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. But then they would get huge.
Yeah.
Did they get huge in this? In one?
Well, they were huge within Aurora. In Chicago.
Yeah. That was actually a good idea. That's a good idea. Redo, and they get big on YouTube.
All right, Brian, thanks for doing this. It was fun.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
All right, yeah, as I mentioned, Underdog is now the sponsor of the show, so go to Underdog, download the app, use code Mayo, $100, you'll get your match up to that, and I'll have some stuff out on Twitter. I put out some live stuff just to pick on Anthony Kim. We'll see if that works. You'll know, because you're watching this in the future, or listening to it in the future, whether or not that worked out. But we'll have some F1 stuff over the weekend from Run the Sims, and I'll translate that over into Underdog, and there's a survey down in the description. Fill it out to get yourself in a draw. I believe that there are 5 $1,000 giveaway prizes. All you gotta do is create the account using code Mayo and then hit that survey. If you already have an Underdog account, you just do the survey and you're good to go. You're in the draw. All right, smash a like if you're still watching this. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience.